Joanne Robinson. I was born in Ottawa at the Grace Hospital in 1960. I am the last daughter of Florence Robinson. I'm here today representing her for this project. My mother came here in the late 1950s. After that, she sent for my father and they were married. Then she had my sister, and then myself after. Growing up, we were sent back to Jamaica, my sister and I, for our parents to reestablish themselves here first. When we came back in time for school, and to also see a very different environment. My mother worked part-time as, I guess they call it a maid. Before she took care of children. She took care of several families when she first came. The families all treated her very well. Then she ended up working for Senator Florence and her husband, and they equally treated her well, brought us in like family members. Growing up here was very difficult at that time, as there were not that many people here. My parents were one of the welcome wagons, I guess you would call it. Anyone that came, my parents opened up the door. We had a lot of people living with us for a long time. It was great because you had this extended family, so it worked out very well. My father was one of the few men that had a car, so he tended to drive people here and there and everywhere. There were parties on, which there weren't that many because there were so few. He would pick up and drop off until everybody eventually got to the party. One of the things that I've noticed growing up is that although a lot of the ladies that came as domestics were not treated equally, I would say, they were the ones that taught all these people that you now call the doctors, the lawyers, etc., their formal behavior. Because quite often these children were left with my mother and other ladies from birth up until they went off to university and back. I can remember one lady saying that, she grew up these children, which she did. When they graduated, there she was at the graduation ceremony with them. Because these children took these ladies as their mothers. I know some of the parents didn't really like that too much, but that's the way it was. My mother was one of those ladies. She was never interested in going into a different field. That's where she wanted to stay. And when we came back from Jamaica to Ottawa, she worked part-time, and then she was at home with us the rest of the time. We went to school and brought all our friends home for lunch so they could see another way of life, and I think they quite enjoyed it. My parents worked very, very hard. The reason they came here was to get ahead, and I think that they succeeded in that. My father reached ahead. My mother was more interested in being at home and working with the families. I would say that of all the people that came, I guess it was the first 5, my mother came. There's one lady, Mrs. Fagan. She always calls her on the anniversary of their arriving. She says, "Do you remember what day it is?" And the two of them will have a conversation about, "Yes, I remember, and I remember this, and I remember that, and what happened." I find that, so the ladies that came after them had an easier time, not to say that it was an easy time, but just easier integration into the way of life here in Ottawa. Also, too, they all met at the YMCA. It was on Thursdays. Had a great time there. There's also many families here that took in a lot of the ladies as equals, not necessarily as, "Oh, you're necessarily working for me," but as friends. And they were able to make their way along that way as well. I find that the discipline that these ladies had is what helped a lot of our generation now with the way we think about things, and it also helps me to pass that on to my children, and hopefully when they have children it will be passed on to their children, because nowadays you find that that work ethic that these ladies have is not there. They worked hard and they didn't care how hard they worked because they're thinking of making a better life for themselves and their children. I listened to a documentary of a lady in Toronto, and I was quite astounded to find out that she was outside shoveling snow when, year before, she didn't even know what snow was, but part of her duties in taking care of these children were to get up in the morning and to shovel snow. And I thought, imagine, but In her mind, she wanted to have a better place. And she went on, she did not stay domestic, she went on to another job after that. But just the fact that some of these things that they had to do, you didn't think that somebody would ask them to be shoveling snow. I would say that my mother greatly enjoyed her jobs. And although she had been encouraged at one time to go into nursing because she had that kind of heart, she stayed where she was. I know a lot of the other ladies that have come, they've gone on to be nurses, doctors, they've gone on to be politicians, and so forth. So it goes to show that no matter who you are when you come, if you work hard enough and want something badly enough, you can go and get it. Because that is why they came in the first place. Not necessarily because they want to go to the cold country, but because they want to make a better life for their children.